All right. Hello, everyone. Good evening. Let's start getting those cameras on. How's it going today, Michael? How we doing?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
Not too bad, not too bad. What was your day like, man? Did you do any bar stuff today, or are you still just, I'm just taking it low key right now, trying to reset?
Well, I just came from work not too long ago. Uh,
Okay.
yeah, still finishing up a little bit of work before I go into full bar prep mode.
Of course, of course. Okay, coolio. So tonight we're going to be talking about MBEs. So tell me, Michael, right, and kind of share with the group just like where you at, what's your feeling towards the MBE portion of this exam right now? What do we like? What are you looking for out of this workshop?
Well, I'm definitely looking forward to improving my MBE score, like many of us here tonight. My MBE section on the bar exam was not my best. So I'm just trying to get the most out of this session tonight, try to see ways I could improve my score in all the subjects, not just a few of the subjects.
Okay, awesome. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about, right? Because there's definitely something right about when we see kind of like that trend. Like, even if you understand some subjects, some subjects or more than others, you kind of see a lot of your subjects kind of bulk together as far as that percentage. Maybe it's like that range from 20% to, 25% or 30%, or maybe it's even dipping as low as below 10%, but you're not really seeing too many above 50%. And so we start to see like, okay, what's the pattern there? Okay. So first starting off, like I want to address the elephant in the room, right? About MBEs, right? We kind of talked about it in private in some conversations, but like let's just go ahead and call it out for what it is, like the inherent difficulty of performing well on the MBEs. Erica, like what am I alluding to? Like what is this inherent kind of difficulty, right? After going through bar prep, then going to the bar and doing the exam, what is that elephant in the room?
Uh, yeah, I feel like for me at least, I've never been good at multiple choice.
Uh-huh.
So as it is, some of us I feel like already come in at a disadvantage with the multiple choice. But I think what makes it harder is that it's always 50-50, right? So you might be
Mm,
correct on the yes, but maybe the explanation you choose the wrong one. And
mm,
so that to me at least, like I was always 50-50. And so one of the ones that I didn't choose was usually the right one. And so
yeah.
I was like, I was so close. I knew it was yes, but I chose the wrong explanation. So I think that sometimes is what's harder.
So that is a good one, right? Always getting it down to like there's two good answers, right? And the bar is intentional about that. It's like, why is there always two good answers? And so, yeah, I see Mantilla is also agreeing. The one that I'm talking about is how many of us felt like the questions on the bar exam didn't look anything like the questions we did in practice, right? So, Eric, I see you raise your hand raised by A. I see some head nods, right? So, that was even back from when I took the bar. Was it's like, okay, I'm doing all these practice questions, and then I get to the exam, everybody's raising their hand, and the questions look so different. Now, that is the reality, right? What's the reality? What's the reason for this reality? And it's that the bar exam does not release their previous bar MBE questions. They release the essays, they release the PTs, but they do not release the multiple choice. And so, what we're using for practice are these 1,700 licensed questions that Adaptabar has, UWorld has, right? All these major MBE companies, they have those. And then those companies are making up another 1,500 questions on their own based off of those to kind of create that full bank. But the base of that is those licensed questions that, again, every major company has. But those licensed questions are the old ones that have been released by the NCBE, essentially phased out of the exam. So even though we have those as practice, they've been phased out. So again, it's like what we have as practice is really not the best considering for the bar exam, as we did last night, we can go over the July 2023 bar exam, the essay, the PT, and see exactly what was being tested and prepare right with that stuff in mind. So here's my next question. People are passing this exam. People are passing the MBE. what do we think is then the difference for those students, right? They're doing the same practice, adaptive bar, or U world that look different. What do we think might be that difference as to why some people are getting over this hump with the MBE? Any volunteers on that question? JR?
Yeah, sorry, and I'll get my camera on here in just a minute. I'm just getting in from work. But
Okay.
I think it might be two things. I think one, I identify with a lot, or I'm sorry, I don't know who was speaking earlier. But I definitely feel like I could get it down to the right yes or the right no, but then the thing that came after was where I got it wrong. So I think maybe it's a more like concrete understanding of what that role that is being tested is. And I
Exactly.
also think it has to do with confidence a bit, because I think I can get down and be like, oh, this is the role that they're testing. What is that role? Pull it up in my brain and be like, oh, wait, is that actually the role? Am I misremembering it? And then I second guess myself.
Yeah. So there's a little bit of that confidence, right? There's like a list of 10 things that I have of kind of like my almost like Bible rules for MBE. And one of them is practicing not second guessing yourself. So yeah, I definitely love that one about just not second guessing yourself. But the thing that stuck out the most, as you said, JR, was understanding of the law, right? So at the end of the day, right, you have to really understand the law because to me, I don't see that much of a difference sometimes between a multiple choice question and an essay, right? Obviously, some of the nuances, just like it's testing this very small rule, but at the end of the day, it's a hypothetical. And oftentimes I'm working through it in the same way that I do an essay. It's just that I'm not arguing both sides on an essay. I'm looking for what the either right answer is or the most likely outcome. So that's number one, JR, is understanding of the law, right? It's typically a little bit better. Now, the second one, everybody, that I think is the reason why students perform better on the MBE is because they've extracted patterns and they're better at seeing the patterns from the previous time, right? They've done it. So we're going to talk about that today. And essentially what that comes down to is proper practice, right? In a way where once you've made a mistake once, you're not making that mistake again. And I know some of us are doing that, right? We'll do an MBE question, we'll get it wrong, and we won't quite understand all the connections we need to make, right? Think back to yesterday at the end of the essay, and I was asking what are some of the takeaway questions, and we were still kind of stumbling over like, all right, so what's the first thing I do when I start an essay? As I had just said, if we don't take those moments, it's hard to build on top of. So we're going to practice all this stuff today. I'm super excited for this session. Think it's going to be good. And most of what we're going to focus on today is setting up your mindset set on how to practice. And I do this in the Legally Fit orientation, but we're going to go through this a little bit slower and gingerly today, right? And try to reverse and like recondition you on how you do questions. So let me go ahead and get a volunteer for who wants to go through this first question with me. And what I'm looking for in this first volunteer in this first question, I want to start off by seeing exactly how you do the question. I want you to kind of walk me through when you're by yourself and you're doing a practice question. All right, I want you to read through it. I want you to tell me what you're doing, you know, kind of like how long it's typically taking you. I want to really get a sense of what your process looks like. And then I'm going to show you my process as an alternative. So can I get a volunteer for who wants to show us their process of going through a practice question? Oh, let me turn on my do not disturb. All right, okay, here we go, Michael, JR. We'll go with Michael first, and then JR will come back to you on one of the next opportunities. We turn this do not disturb on. Okay.
Yes, do not disturb is on.
Oh, Siri. All right. So, Michael,
Yeah.
I'm going to give you, a little bit of love here, and I'm going to let you choose your favorite subject, whichever subject you want to do right for this. I want you to do something you're somewhat comfortable with. So, out of all the MBE subjects, which one would you like to do?
Criminal procedure.
All right. So, we're going to do a Crim Pro question. I like Crim Pro myself. So, we love that. All right. So, criminal procedure. All right, so we're going to go ahead and do question one here. Can you see that, Michael?
Yes.
All right. Let me zoom in a little bit. I think I can do. Okay. So Michael, this is your first question you're about to do. Kind of like, I want you to kind of do a little bit of two things, like do it and also kind of walk me through maybe like what you're about to do before you do it. But I want to kind of see if, again, you're by yourself and you're doing practice questions, what's your flow? What are you doing? Right. And what are you doing? Yeah. Before you move on to the next one. So yeah, walk me through.
Sure. So the first thing I typically do is read the call of the question. So looking at this one here, I'm seeing the only thing it's saying is the court should. So because it's not really telling me much, I'll just begin reading the fact pattern and try to gauge of like what's telling me. So it says here should I just read the whole fact pattern for everyone as well?
Yeah, so that's the
Okay.
next thing you're gonna do. Yep, go ahead and do it.
The police received an anonymous tip that the defendant was growing marijuana in her backyard, which was surrounded by a 15-foot high solid wooden fence. A police officer was unable to view the yard from the street, so he used a police helicopter to fly over the defendant's house. The officer identified a large patch of marijuana plants growing right next to the house and used his observation to obtain a search warrant. The defendant is prosecuted for possession of marijuana and moves to suppress use of the marijuana in evidence. Okay, so my takeaways from this fact pattern was we have a government official because it says the police received an anonymous tip. And then we have one party, which is the defendant. The party was growing marijuana in the backyard. And we know that the marijuana wasn't not easily accessible, but not easily viewed upon the public because it was surrounded by a 15-foot high solid wooden fence. So we know that the marijuana was hidden. In order for the police officer to see it, he used a helicopter to fly over the house so that he could identify that there was a large patch of marijuana. We know that the defendant has been prosecuted and has been charged with this crime. The defendant wants to suppress the evidence from being admitted. So now my next, or I guess the takeaway is I have to remember the rule in terms of, I forgot the terminology right now because it's been so long, but I remember that in Crim Pro, if there's something that is, so this is a search, so this will be like a Fourth Amendment issue.
Okay.
And so we know that this is a Fourth Amendment issue and this is dealing with searches and how it's being like accessible. So then I remember vaguely that if it's easily accessible to the public, then you don't have that right to privacy. But if it's not easily accessible and the police officer has to do something to try to get the evidence one way or another that may infringe upon your rights, then it can be excluded. I don't know the exact rule, but I know that if the officer is flying over, like with a helicopter or with any other device that they can easily see it, then the evidence can be admissible in court. So my predetermined answer choice is the evidence will be admitted and the judge or the court may not grant the defendant's motion to suppress the evidence. So then I'm going to try to look at the answer choices to see what's going to give me the closest thing to it. So I know that the court's going to deny the motion. So I'm just going to get rid of A and B.
Okay.
And so I'm looking at C. It says deny the motion because a warrant's not required for a search of a residential yard. Okay. I'm not really thrilled upon it because it's focusing on a warrant. And I know for a warrant, there is a search warrant and arrest warrant. We're not dealing with an arrest warrant. We're dealing with a search warrant. I don't think this is focusing on warrant aspect. This is more focusing on like the expectation of privacy. So then I'm just going to look at answer choice D and it says deny the motion because the defendant had no reasonable expectation of privacy from aerial observation. So I'm just going to go with D because this question's focusing on privacy. We have key facts like the 15-foot solid wooden fence. We have the fact that the officer wasn't able to view the yard from the street. So the fact that he had to get a helicopter to fly over the property so that he could see it, we're dealing with more of an issue of a reasonable expectation of privacy. So it would just be answer choice D.
And so I'm not sure if I'm like mixing up a little bit of what you're saying, but are you on the side of that that this person had, like, the police went too far, and so that this was a search, or this was like they did have a reasonable expectation of privacy, or are you saying what the officers did was okay and therefore?
Right. I'm saying what they did was okay and that the court will admit it. I just can't remember the rule as to why
Got it.
Conduct is permissible.
Got it. Okay, cool. No worries. All right. So awesome. So then let's say then, right, I have a lot of notes, and I'm like keeping notes of some of these things. Because you I'm keeping notes of some of these things so I can address all of it. But just to kind of get that full flow, so let's go ahead and say that I then show you right, the adaptive bar says that D is the correct answer. What do you then do from there?
I would just read their explanation as to why it was the correct answer, so I could just refresh myself with the rule.
Okay.
The reasoning that D was the correct answer choice.
Okay, and then after that, now we're ready to move on. It's okay.
Yeah, pretty much.
There we go. Okay.
Yeah.
So read through the answer choice. Okay. See, what the rule was. Okay. Got it. All right. And then move on. Okay. So let's go through, right, nitpicking this a little bit, and then I'm going to give you mine. So first off, I love that you started off with the call of the question, right? The court should. However, as you mentioned here, it said the court should, and then didn't say anything to give you really kind of any tip. And I don't want you to go into the question blindly, because, right, I did tell you this was a crim pro question, but otherwise you'd be reading this question not really knowing anything at all about what this is. So what I would do is scan the answer choices, right? So if you scan these answer choices, right, you start to see some patterns. You see grant the motions, there's a motion involved, okay? The officer's flight, and then you see reasonable expectation of privacy. You see reasonable expectation of privacy again, and then you see warrant. All those are then narrowing in to Fourth Amendment. So that's definitely doing half the battle for you right there of helping you figure out what is being tested. Then you went through and read the question, and I'm sure you would have done it quicker in your head, but you kind of recap the facts, which I think is good. You read the facts and like make sure you process it all, and then you were trying to then get to the area of law. Now, Michael, when you're doing practice questions on your own, do you have your outline by your side, or how often are you using your materials to assist you through multiple choice?
Well, the first approach, the first time I took the test, I didn't have my notes with me. I would just look at the lecture videos, take notes, and then afterwards, I would just do some practice questions, but I wouldn't have anything or any supplements near me because I just wanted to see how I was performing. And then what I would do is if I got a question wrong, I would just read the explanation, and then I would just move on to the next question. I didn't do anything else after that.
Got it. So everybody, I recommend, as in the Legally Fit formula, we have our folder system, but whether you have your folder system in Legally Fit and or just your outline that you have for that class, have that material by your side, right? Because what you're going to do at that point is work on your issue spotting, Michael, and figure out what exactly is the rule that's being tested. Now, I do think I have a little bit of a light bulb for a lot of us as to why we're getting to two answers, right? And being stuck in between two. Michael did an analysis, right, that I think a lot of us do sometimes. He didn't like pinpoint the exact rule. He just kind of did like a soft analysis of like, right, I remember some things, which I think that's really good. That shows you had something that you took away from a previous question. That's what guided you here, right? So that's good, but you also want to be able to pinpoint what really is this question focusing on. So you left this question simply saying that I think they like should deny the motion, right? But not knowing exactly what rule is being tested here. So when you said I think they should deny the motion, then that takes you into the answer choice, and then you are then evaluating both of the deny the motion options,
Right.
as opposed to knowing before you go into the answer choices, knowing specifically why they are denying it. So again, let me read this question and kind of like, here's how my thought process goes, which is very similar, but it's just going a little bit further, right? And so I would say, all right, police received an anonymous tip. As soon as I see anonymous tip, I'm like, is that probable cause that the defendant was growing marijuana in her backyard, which was surrounded by a 15-foot solid wooden fence. Like, that's a pretty high fence. Like, okay, they've, like you said, gone through efforts to keep their thing private. Cool. A police officer was unable to view the yard from the street. Okay, it's protected. So he used a police helicopter to fly over the defendant's house. The officer identified a large patch of marijuana plants going right next to the house and used his observation to search a warrant. I'm immediately going to, when I'm dealing with, right, flying over, right, to view things, this is tested specifically within the search rules of the Fourth Amendment and whether this is actually a search. And to your point, it was all about whether or not this person has access to, right, the means of seeing it is something that the public would have access to, right, as you mentioned. And now here, what are the details around the police and what they were doing and how they viewed it? It says here that they used a police helicopter to fly over. Well, is the public allowed to fly over?
Yeah, you have airplanes flying over all the time.
Helicopters flying over, exactly, right? And there's nothing here to say that they were in any type of non-public airspace, right? So I'm doing all this analysis, and then I'm realizing, okay, it looks like this is good, but that's what this is focusing on. So right now, Michael, I'm going to deny this motion because the police here never committed a search. So then when I go to my answer choices, I'm no longer between C and D. I'm going straight to what answer choice?
You're going straight to D, right?
Straight to D, right? Because this is talking about like, and that's where even you hesitated still, right? But which of those has language connected to what this question is about? And it's D. D, reasonable expectation of privacy, is connected to a search, right? The whole aerial observation is what's going on here. And then, so look, I will always just kind of do a quick glance just to make sure the other one's not better, but I'm not really evaluating them to see which one is better first. I'm going to the one that matches what I came up with. And so then I look at C and I'm like, deny the motion because a warrant is not required for a search of a residential yard. And this is one of those type of questions that sometimes trip us up, but this is just like an overstatement of the rule, right? Like, to say something like this, like a warrant is not required for the search of a residential yard, it's just kind of like, I mean, sure, right? But it's just like, that's not a rule that we've learned in this way to like make that statement.
Right.
So there we go. So that is, so I want you to, the takeaway there, which is a big part of our formula, is everybody, I want you to be able to pinpoint the exact rule that's being tested. I want you to, when you're doing practice, have your outline next to you. And if you couldn't pinpoint the exact rule, before you look at the answer choice, look at your legally fit folder system or look at whatever the resource you're using, the outline, right, which has more information in it, but you could still use it. But try to use that to find the rule, right? Try to use that to like locate in what is this testing? And then once you do, you run through the full analysis. This goes back to what Erica was talking about a second ago, right? Where sometimes we don't do a full analysis, and that's then why multiple answer choices might look good. Maybe we forgot to do the exception, right? So that's why you don't want to rely on that. You want to do a full analysis, come up with the answer on your own, which you said, a predetermined answer, and then go and find it and not be so pulled. Don't second guess yourself. Don't be so pulled by something else. All right. So I have some more things that I want to talk about, but I think for the first question, I want us to build on top of what we're doing. We'll come back to this question with the next point, but this right now we're focusing on how do you go through questions? And that was a comparison there. The next thing we're going to talk about is like how to properly learn from each question. So let's take the next volunteer. And what I want you to do is try to practice what we just did. And then at the end of the question, we're going to talk about what you have to like take away from a question to be able to improve for the next time. So JR, do you still want to volunteer for me?
I'm happy to volunteer if nobody else felt like trying.
Okay, let's do it. So let me see which one we're going to do here. Okay, so we're going to do question 815. I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to put this one in the chat. Actually, I think I can do this one on the screen. I had to crop this one from a picture. I think this should pop up well. You'll let me know. Share. All right. So I need to make that bigger, or is that readable? Okay, cool. Let me make it a little bit bigger. All right. So we're going to practice what we did. Again, you're going to read the question. And if you notice here, I did take out the answer choices because I want to really show you guys how we can get to the right answer without having it. So I want you to come up with the answer on your own. Then I'll show the full question. But we're going to read through the question. We're going to pinpoint the specific rule that's being tested. If necessary, we're going to pull up the outline. If you don't remember the rule that's being tested here, we're going to go through the outline so you can get to the right answer and then go from there. All right. So why don't you go ahead and read that question for us, JR?
Okay. So I'll start with call the question as well. That's what I do. And so it's going to be as of June 5th, when the retailer received the wholesale company's acceptance form, which of the following is an accurate statement concerning the legal relationship between the wholesale company and the retailer? So now I know that I'm going to be looking at like formation, and then specifically I'm triggered by acceptance in the call the question. So kind of starting with that mental picture there. Now the actual body of the question for facts is on June 1, a wholesale company received a purchase order form from a retailer in which the latter ordered 1,000 anti-recoil widgets for delivery no later than August 30th. At a delivered total price of $10,000 as quoted in the wholesale company's current catalog. Both parties are merchants with respect to widgets to all types. I know that there's a merchants rule, so that's dinging in my head too as I'm reading this. It's probably something I would highlight, and then I would also be highlighting the dates. Sorry, I don't know if you want to keep talking through it like this.
No, this is good.
Okay, and then on June 2nd, the wholesale company mailed to the retailer its own form, across the top of which the wholesaler company's president had written, "We are pleased to accept your order." This form contained the same terms as the retailer's form, except for an additional printed clause. So I know that that's something that I'm going to want to highlight too. In the wholesale company's forms that provided for maximum liability of $100 for any breach of contract by the wholesale company. Our question once again is as of June 5, when the retail company received the wholesale company's acceptance form, which of the following is an accurate statement concerning the legal relationship between the wholesale company and the retailer?
Good. So literally, the call to question is all fun and dandy, but what I got to do is kind of analyze the situation here. Like, what happened? This is a contract, right? And regarding the whole, like, basically, like, what's a contract form and what's going on, especially with this maximum liability? Good. So, all right, what's your, based off of using that formula we just did. So now you're not necessarily doing it as Michael did in the way you did. Now you're trying to do it per the way that I just instructed, which is, right? The next step is to do what?
Is it go through like the folder of the rule that we know? Or what
It's,
rule?
it's to identify the specific rule that's being tested.
Okay, so here, my main thing is we see two merchants and we know that there's specific rules about merchants and contracts. So that's where my brain is going. And it has to do with terms within contracts between merchants, because where my brain is going is, and again, like I'm obviously so rusty, haven't looked at this since August, but I do remember that like as long as the term doesn't materially change the terms of the contract, then like even if there's no response after a certain amount of days to refute an acceptance or what have you, then a contract is in place. And that's all I have right now with where I'm at brain wise.
Okay, cool. And so you're kind of getting to some specifics, but what I want to see if anybody can phone a friend and provide is what is the area of law? What is the rule that's being tested? What area of contract law is this test triggering? So you gave me some of the detail of it, but I need to know, yeah, what is this testing? Any volunteers?
Battle of the Forms.
Battle of the Forms, exactly. Right. So we want to know that this is a UCC 2207 question. Now, right, clearly, as you said, like you're doing this practice question, JR, and you don't remember it thoroughly, right? I have an idea. Okay, we have found it, right? So now what you would need to do is go to your outline and see if you can like come up with it exactly and not go off of half of a memory. Some of us are inclined, right, to just come up with what we know based off of what we can remember instead of the full rule. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up one of the legally fit charts that we have for contracts, specifically 2207. And I want you to use this to get to your answer. Now, what we're testing right now is when you have the rule and you have the facts, can you get to the right answer, which is not always a given. Sometimes we don't know, or like there's a gap there, and then therefore this process is going to expose that. So let me go ahead and share the screen on this chart. Do you remember the facts before, you know, we got all the facts down? Because I don't think I'll be able to have both of them up at the same time. Are you good on the facts, JR?
Oh yes.
Okay, cool.
I also took a little screen grab.
Okay, perfect. All right, and so here is our 2207 chart. All right, so UCC Battle of the Forms. You go through the preliminary questions really quickly. So JR, does the UCC apply here?
Yes.
Yes, because this is for the sale of goods. It said it was for anti-recoil widgets. Does anybody know what a widget is? And especially an anti-recoil widget? No, but we can sense that that is a good. All right, so yes. Acceptance is definite, seasonable, and has new terms, right? So was there an acceptance that was definite, seasonable with new terms?
I would say yes.
Yeah, definite means it had the same material terms, which it had the same price and quantity, etc., an item. It was seasonable. There's nothing to say that it wasn't given, right? It said on June 1st, delivery, and then the next day they sent the acceptance, so that's good. And then new terms. And look how I'm going back to the fact pattern to analyze all of this, right? Because, and this is what I'm saying, a thorough analysis, right? So remember how you were saying like, oh, it's merchants and between parties, JR, and then like you could just be kind of analyzing that. And without doing a thorough analysis, what if one of these smaller rules was not met? And we missed that because we didn't do this full right breakdown. So does this have a new term? And if so, what is it, JR? Are you with me, JR?
Looks like she had Wi-Fi problems and dropped.
Ooh, all right. We're gonna have to tag a friend in. Let's go to Sarah. What's up, Sarah?
Hi. It was, I don't remember exactly, but it was like the $100 clause for something. Sorry, I didn't screenshot it.
The maximum liability of
Liability
$100 clause, right? So that was the new term. Okay. So then we're gonna go through the next question. Was the expression of acceptance made expressly conditional on inclusion of the new term? Does that question make sense to you, Sarah, too? Like, do you know what that is really?
Yes. But now I'm trying to remember the wording of the question.
Yeah, and let me put the fact pattern back in here because
Okay.
I do think you're gonna need to see that. I'll put it in the chat so you guys can pull that up. Okay. So go ahead and pull that up for me, Sarah, and then let me know what you think.
This is the form containing the same terms. I would say, yeah, it was just an additional term, but it's not. Oh, where did the other thing go? Sorry, I can only look. It's only showing me one thing at a time.
Yeah.
I lost like the big screen. Wait, how do I get back to it?
Maybe try swiping with
Oh,
four.
I got it. Okay, so your question was the expression of acceptance made expressly conditional on the inclusion of the new terms?
Correct.
No.
Okay, so we're going no. I'm not going to say that you're right or wrong on that yet, but like, because this is a tough question, especially if you haven't done a lot of questions yet, but you have to like do it confidently, as Sarah just did. I'm gonna go with no. This is not expressly conditional. How confident are you in that, by the way?
I'm pretty confident. I mean, I just skimmed it super quickly, but I'm pretty sure.
Oh, you skimmed what pretty quickly? The fact pattern or
The
the
fact pattern again, yeah.
okay. Well, it was just that one section. Like, you want to look at it one more time just to be sure? Because as we're doing this, I want it to be like, very thorough. So like, you want to
Okay.
look at it one more
Yeah,
time?
I'll get it again.
Look at it one more time just to make sure you are confident with your answer.
Okay. Mayor, please accept order. Yeah, I still think. Yeah, I still think no.
Okay, good. So then, right, you would continue to go through this chart, and then the next question you ask yourself is the new term additional or different. What would it be here under these circumstances?
Additional.
Additional. And then it says additional term is added if, and then you have two ways. Express is sent by the offeror. Do we have express is sent by the offeror here?
No.
Nope. There's nothing to say that the here the wholesale company received a purchase order form and the wholesale company is one that sent it. So there's nothing to say that the retailer expressly agreed to this maximum liability clause. Okay, so then you go down to both parties are merchants rule. Are both parties merchants here?
Yes.
How do we know that?
Because there's a wholesale company and a retailer. They both.
I think there's something even better. Take a look at the fact pattern again. So this is where that reading comprehension.
Oh, it says both parties are merchants.
Yeah, right. Look, that one, it actually just gave it to us on a platter. Both parties are merchants, so the term is added unless you have one of those three things that are met. So would you say any of those exceptions are met?
No.
Okay, so you're gonna go with no. So what is now your conclusion to this scenario?
That there is a contract.
And
this is where it's the hard part.
yeah,
And
because what does this all come down to, Sarah? Like,
it doesn't materially alter the contract. The new term
well,
doesn't.
well, that's part of the analysis, but this whole scenario, this is why you connect yourself with why the party's upset and what do they want. One, essentially, both parties necessarily, want there to be a contract, but one of them what and the other doesn't.
One of them provided a maximum liability.
Yeah, and in theory, one party what? One party wants that maximum liability clause in there and one doesn't. So like your final answer needs to account for that. And this is also where everybody know that 2207, this is where knowing the law would be like the improved understanding of the law is that every 2207 question answers two questions. Is there a contract and is the additional term added? So your final answer was half complete. I want you to now, based off of your analysis, let me know if the new term will be added.
Yes.
Good. So that change, and that in theory, would then determine the outcome. If that in fact is part of the contract, then there is a maximum liability of $100. So then you would go through the answer choices and you would find one that said that yes, there is a contract, and yes, this term is added. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you that the correct answer choice is that this is yes, a contract, but no, the term will not be added. Before you even look further and go into the explanation, I want you, and this is what I would do if I was practicing, I would look at the answer choice that was correct. And before I read the sample answer, I'm going to think, can I now figure out why? So let's see if you can guess where you went wrong.
Step 2
which is what specifically?
was the expression of acceptance made expressly conditional on inclusion of the new terms.
Okay, and so
But
you're saying you would have now gone the yes route instead?
I mean, I still don't see how it's a counter offer. So maybe not, but maybe.
Okay.
But I also have not looked also at this since July. So I don't.
Well, right now, this would be as if you were doing a question right now, you know? So like
Yeah.
I feel you that we haven't started it, but this would be like, you know, what's the best bet? So would you kind of stop here, or do you have another maybe feeling of where maybe you went wrong?
Well, I didn't feel like it was a different term. I felt like it was an additional term, but maybe I'm not correct in that.
Okay. So this is where like I at least want you to take that stab of like everybody of like when you are wrong, before you look at it, see if you can kind of figure out and guess where you were wrong. All
Yeah,
right.
because it even says for an additional printed clause. I mean, I guess the wording is the wording, but I still don't feel like it's a it's additional term in my eyes, but I could be misinterpreting it.
Okay, so let's pause here again. Like, you don't need to like we would never spend too long, but it's just the notion and the practice of the habit of not jumping to the answer. First, see if you can figure out on your own why you were wrong. So this is what it's going to come down to, Sarah. The correct answer was that no, this was not expressly conditional. This, in fact, was 22072, and it would be treated as an acceptance. This, in fact, was an additional term. This was not different. For it to be different, there had to be something in the original offer that conflicts with this term.
Right.
Maybe if it was like, oh, there's a maximum liability of 50, and then this one says there's a maximum liability of 100. Those would be different. That's not what we have here.
Mm-hmm.
So this was additional. Both parties are merchants. We know there's no arguing that, right? It says that right there. This is going to be deemed a term that materially alters the contract.
Even for $100?
Yeah,
That's
even for
what got me. $100. I was like, oh, that doesn't feel material to me.
Got you. Okay. So this is perfect. So now we've read it. You've just said that to me. Now, Sarah, I'm going to tell you, I want to ask you before you moved on to the next question. Now, you just gone through it. You just figured it out because I've explained it to you, but you figured that out on your own. What are you doing next?
Like once I find the answer or see the answer.
Yeah, once you see the
I'm wrong.
answer, you just had this epiphany now, like, oh, I didn't, what? Why only $100? And then you realize what it is in this. Yeah.
What I would do is read the explanation, and then like sometimes there's a really big explanation and then the small one. I would do both, and then I would write out the rule and write out like something as small as $100 can be like an like give myself more reasoning behind why I got where I went wrong.
Okay. So that's good. That especially that last part. Writing out the rules, everybody, is like good, especially if it's like a nuanced rule that you've never seen before. That's what I like to write out rules for. If it's like one of those small rules I've never seen, I'll write that out. But this rule, I don't need to write out this rule, in my opinion, Sarah, because I have this rule. This rule is in my outline, right? This is not like I didn't know the rule. Really, this just came down to what simple mistake?
The reasoning.
No, this just came down to the fact that you thought this materially altered the contract. Excuse me, you thought it didn't materially alter the contract, but it does. So don't treat all problems the same. And you don't need to write out the whole rule for 2207 or write out the exception. That's kind of like almost like a punishment in a sense, as opposed to just kind of locking in on what went wrong. So I think even in doing all of that, we've kind of gotten away from what the main takeaway for you is. So the main takeaway for you would be accepting the fact that a maximum liability clause, no matter the amount that it is a term that materially alters a contract. And you would need to either write that down, but you don't even have to. You can also just like sit with that for a second, right? Because what even is a maximum liability? Like make it make sense, right? So what is a maximum liability clause?
Yeah, I also think I was thinking of it backwards. So now I do see why that is materially altering. I think I was thinking of it, I think I was reading too quickly and I was thinking of it as I don't know how to explain it, but I was thinking of it backwards. It does seem materially altering now because you're saying only liable for $100, which for a $10,000 purchase order, that's a lot.
So do you think that, and this is great too, right? Because you have to like see what you're going to do if you see something similar in the future. Do you think that if the maximum liability amount changed, that it would no longer material? So what if it said maximum liability of $10,000?
No, I think just like a liability clause, maybe in general, is materially altering.
Good.
Yeah.
And then also the question that I did ask that you haven't answered yet is like, what is a maximum liability? So we just kind of like connect the dots there. What is a maximum liability clause?
They're just saying that's the most they're gonna be liable for.
Good. So you want to just like, I actually want to like say that, oh, maximum liability, because it is easy to just read that over real quick, which is what you did and just focus on the 100. So what this was saying that in the event of a breach, I'm not going to be liable for more than 100. Something like that is deemed to materially alter the contract. Got it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That is like a main take. That would be Sarah's main takeaway here. And probably the main takeaway for most people, right? Because that is the ultimately like where this question comes down to. But now some of us may have gotten some other points wrong. And even for you, Sarah, who got it right, what are some takeaways that are also good for the rest of this fact pattern?
That explicitly says both parties are merchants, and I didn't catch that immediately.
Good. Now, here's another one, right? The pivotal question always is, was the expression of acceptance made expressly conditional on inclusion of the new terms? What was the fact that you used to determine that outcome? The specific fact that you used to determine that the answer there was no.
I don't remember.
Let's go to the fact pattern. Yeah.
Okay. That we are pleased to accept your order.
Okay, it's so when they give us the actual acceptance, it says we are pleased to accept your order. Do we have any other detail on what was said? Do we have any other details, Sarah, on what was said in the acceptance?
The form contained the same terms as the original of the retailer's form, except that one clause. I'm not sure what I'm missing.
No, you're not missing anything.
Oh.
I just want us to like lay it out. I want us to like know what's going on here. And what happened is like there was quotes and specificity around them saying we are pleased to accept your offer, and then all they did really was include the additional term. Because what I want everybody to do, Sarah, is then connect that to an example of when the answer is no to that pivotal question. So now you have something to compare future hypos to.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So now in my head, what I'm doing, Sarah, even though you got that right, you did it quickly, but you have to like take a second to confirm that you did that right. And then you're going to say to myself, okay, so whenever they simply accept and then just add the new term, I know that the answer is no, that this was not expressly conditional. Is that clear?
Wait, can you say that again? I feel like I'm there, but I'm not 100% there.
So what I'm saying is that I know that when they simply say, I accept, in one way or another, they put the I'm pleased, right? Those are all the fluff words. But when they simply accept plus add in a new term, I know that that's an example of not being expressly conditional.
Right. Okay.
Yep. So what I'm doing there is like, even though you got that right, you got it wrong, but you got most of the things right. And even though it was a quick fix for you, what I'm trying to show everybody right now is like, this is how you squeeze the juice out of a practice question. And it doesn't take this long because we're doing all the back and forth. But once you get it, it's like, you have to like go back and look at all the things and make those connections, right? So that way, when you do the next question, you're not slowing down and you're connecting it to something that you've seen before. So even if there is a curveball, certain things you should be able to get through quicker. All right. So here's one last practice that I want to do. And Sarah, let's go ahead and finish strong together.
Okay.
So it's important to be able to generalize a scenario so that way, again, you can like see the patterns. So when then you see another pattern that's similar and it's not retail or excuse me, anti-recoil widgets, it's really still the same thing. So give me your best effort at now that you know what the answer here is, summarizing just like what took place in a very generalized way, like only kind of focused on the aspects of this question that were important for the analysis.
Okay, so the fact pattern included 2 merchants.
Mhm.
And oh, I'm so bad at this.
It's okay.
2 merchants.
Thank you for trying. Yeah.
There was an expression of acceptance that was not made expressly conditional when they included an additional term. But the additional term, even though they were merchants, the additional term materially altered the contract. So there would be no contract.
So there, you remember you said there would be a contract, but the term would not be added.
The term would not be added. Right.
Okay, cool. And again, I know this is tough. I'm putting you on the hot seat, and doing this is exactly difficult, which is why I wanted to do it with you all. So again, I appreciate you doing this with me. So let me show you how I am moving on from this and how I'm generalizing this fact pattern. So what I'm saying is an offeror sent an order form, a purchase order form, and the offeree sent an acknowledgement form. And they said, I accept, but they also included a new term. That right there is like the beginning of this. And that right there is the reason why I am in 2207. So that is taking the general facts and showing me how I got to this area of law. I had an offeror sent a purchase order form. I had an offeree send an acknowledgement form with an acceptance plus an additional term. That is the bare trigger for 2207. So, yep, now I'm like, okay, I see that. And then I'm going into the acceptance form simply said, I accept the order, and it added the new term. And the term here was a maximum liability clause, right? Because they simply accepted with nothing else, no other language, this was deemed an acceptance. But because a maximum liability clause is something that is too much, essentially, it materially alters the contract. So this term was not added. Got it. Ready to move on. What did you think of that, Sarah?
Yep, that was great.
Good. And so this is definitely something that you and everybody here is capable of doing. It just takes practice to kind of like do that. And all you're doing is literally almost starting from the beginning, and you're just kind of like getting rid of the fluff. All right, getting rid of the 1,000 anti-recoil widgets, all those dates that we might have thought were important the first time, the money, the $10,000 that we thought that was important the first time. Like, we're getting rid of all of that to see what was the pattern. Okay, let me stop sharing. And before we move on to the next question, any questions on that problem that we just did? And more so around like the process, but if there's any substantive questions, we can do that too. But like, any thoughts, questions, impressions on taking out the pattern and really seeing like, what takeaways we need to take away from a question? No? Okay, so let me just get a little bit of feedback and kind of hear what's going on in your guys' mind. So let me go back to Erica. So Erica, yeah, like going through that process, are you doing takeaways in that way? Does that seem difficult? Like, yeah, give me some thoughts or impressions as I'm trying to teach you all how to take away things from each question that you do.
I feel like the process sounds right. And I feel like what I was doing with my MBEs was kind of like what Michael was doing without notes, just kind of just trying to figure out what the best one was and wasn't going through like an actual process. And so I think this is going to be really helpful. And like you said, we'll get faster with it.
Yes.
But yeah, it's nice to have this foundation because I feel like I really did not have a foundation for the MBEs.
It was just wild, wild west. It's like, let's just do them,
Yeah.
let's go through them.
It
Yeah.
was just like the more you practice, the more you get it. But I'm like, if I'm practicing wrong, then I'm gonna keep getting them wrong.
Exactly. Okay, good. Awesome. All right. So we're going to do 2 more questions and then we're going to do a recap of all that we learned to make sure we all got it packed in before we leave. So I'm going to switch over to this deck that I have because I have a question existing on this presentation I did. I thought this question would be good. So let me go ahead and put this in present mode. Do I got a volunteer for the next question, please? And JR, good to have you back. You had a little Wi-Fi issue. Maybe JR still got a little Wi-Fi issue. All right. So who wants to go ahead and do question number, what is this now? 3. Anita, you've been killing things. Anita still here?
I'm here, sir.
All right, Anita, you mind going through this question with me?
Okay, yeah, maybe I'm unorthodox, but I'm gonna try, okay?
Okay, let's do it.
Okay, so in an action by the purchaser against the man for breach of contract, the purchaser probably will do something. Okay, from the top, in a telephone call on March 1st. So I immediately see statute of frauds, right? Needs to be in writing. An unemployed retired man said to a purchaser, I will sell my automobile for $3,000 cash. I will hold this offer open through March 14th. On March 12th, the man called the purchaser and told her that he had sold the automobile to a friend. The man, in fact, had not sold the automobile to anyone. On March 14th, the purchaser learned that the man still owned the automobile and on that date called the man and said, I'm coming over to your place with $3,000. The man replied, don't bother. I won't deliver the automobile to you under any circumstances. The purchaser protested, but made no further attempt to pay for or take delivery of the automobile. In an action by the purchaser against the man for breach of contract, the purchaser probably will.
And now, Anita, again, despite that call of the question, what do we essentially have to do here?
We have to figure out what rule of law applies. And of course, I'm assuming these guys aren't merchants, but statute of frauds jumps out at me. And so because the statute of frauds jumps out at me, I know that it's the sale of the good, it's a car, it's over $500. We're told it's $3,000. So therefore writing is required. And then I don't think there are any exceptions to the statute of fraud, obviously, because they haven't taken possession and all that stuff, partial payment. So we don't see that.
Awesome. So we're going with, this is a contract scenario. So we have to figure out ultimately, was there a contract and was there a breach?
Yeah.
You're going with no contract because statute of frauds is violated. This contract is not enforceable.
Yes.
Okay. And let's just go for a quick little bit of feedback or just see, one other voice on this. I'm gonna come back to you, Anita.
All right. And I'm gonna reread it too.
Yeah, go ahead. Take a second to reread it.
No. But silently while you talk to someone else.
Yes,
okay.
Okay. And I'm coming right back. So, but Jose, what do you think, Jose? Are you feeling that this is a statute of frauds question? Are you feeling the same outcome? Like, you have any input you want to add? Or are you still not sure yourself?
I agree that it is a statute of frauds. There is an issue with the statute of frauds there, but the fact that he didn't actually what was it? I will hold this offer open through March 14th. Okay, but on March 12th, the man called the purchaser and told her that he had sold the automobile to a friend, which was not true, right? The man, in fact, cannot sold the automobile to anyone. On March 14th, the purchaser learned that the man still owned the automobile and that on that date called the man and said, I'm coming over to your place with $3,000. So I'm thinking that he basically rejected the offer because he said that
The auto, he had sold it to a friend.
Okay.
So I don't think there's a contract there.
So are you then looking for, sounds like you guys are looking for the same outcome, but for different reasons. And now
Sure.
here's where two answer choices look good. Let's go ahead and say, if you guys see me randomly clap, by the way, there's been a mosquito in this room that's just terrorizing me. So don't be alarmed. But if it gets in my wingspan, I'm killing it. So this is where you could get down to two good answer choices. It could say no contract because statute of fraud is violated. And then another one says no contract because there was a revocation. So and that's again where, okay, let's figure out what we need to do. So I'm going to now walk through this, right? And then we're going to see what our takeaways are from this, right? And then I'm going to give some lessons based off of what I heard. So in a telephone call, as Anita accurately did, whenever it's a contract and you see call, said, talk, that was really, really keen to see that and think of statute of frauds. An unemployed retired man said to a purchaser, I will sell my automobile for $3,000 cash. I will hold this offer open through March 14th. All of a sudden, Anita, you got hooked on statute of frauds, and then you stopped kind of analyzing and saying things as you went, which I thought was shocking. And that happens sometimes. We get tunnel vision on the first thing that we see, and then we stop. So when it says I will hold the offer open through March 14th, what is that triggering?
Option contract.
Option contract. Perfect. Now, once we're getting advanced enough with the law, hopefully, right, we can analyze some of these on the go because this is some more or less easy analysis. Now, my question to you, if you remember the rules, is this a valid option contract? What's the rule for option contract? I promise to hold the offer open and
I thought an option contract needed some money, so it needed a down payment.
So it needs an offer to hold a promise
consideration
plus additional do we have additional consideration here for that?
I didn't see any.
So we're analyzing as we go. So it says I will hold this offer open for you until March 14th, but does he actually have to?
No,
because it's not a valid option contract. So that analysis I want you to be doing as you go through. All right. On March 12th, the man called the purchaser and told her that he had sold the automobile to a friend. The man, in fact, had not sold the automobile to anyone. Analyzing as we go there, what are we summarizing that as?
A revocation.
Is it a revocation, even though he had in fact not sold the automobile to anyone?
No, because it was a lie. I mean, it wasn't true.
So does the lie affect the revocation is my question?
I don't know.
Great. And this is the trick part of the question. They want to play to your emotions right here. They want you to be like, whoa, okay, I've never seen that before. Like he tried to revoke, but then he lied about, having sold it. So I need you to pick, you're in the fork in the road. I need you to pick a side with confidence and based off of logic.
I just think it has to do with, it wasn't in writing because it was over.
So this is where you're not, it's okay. This is where I need you to be more disciplined, Anita. So, and this is for everybody, right? What are we analyzing right now? I'm going to pull up my contracts outline. What are we analyzing for that question, that fork in the road that I just gave you?
Oh, about whether or not it was an option. And so it was an options contract. Well, whether or not it was, and whether or not that phone call was he able to revoke it? First of all, do we have did he accept the offer? So if he can revoke it, like when they hold out, I think but there's no money on it. So it wasn't an options contract. So I'm a little confused on this one.
Yeah. And we're getting a little lost in the sauce, right? Which is natural in this scenario. So what you're doing is you're complicating it as well, because we said that there was no option contract, right? Right. Because there was no additional consideration done.
That's correct.
So that means it is revocable. Then we asked ourselves, when he called and said, right, that he was revoking, right, even though it was he was lying about it, does that still make it a valid revocation? And we don't know that. We've never seen that before. So I'm going to stop sharing now.
Mhm.
And now I'm going to share my outline, because this is what you have to do. Then you said, I'm going to go back to the fact that it wasn't in writing, where don't use that. Use your rule for revocation, because that's what we're analyzing. So what is the rule for direct revocation?
Oh, direct revocation. The offer has been directly revoked if the offer or if the offerer expressly communicates the revocation to the offeree. Direct revocation typically occurs through words. I revoke my offer.
Okay, so that is your rule. Now, did it say anything about there that if somebody lies, then do this?
No.
So we have to analyze with the rule that we have, but that rule, not the whether it was in writing and all that other stuff. So my question to you is, based off of that rule, where are you going to go at this fork in the road?
I'm going to look at those answer choices.
No, you're not. I need you to use your logic, Anita. I want you to tell me. So it said here, I'm going to repeat the facts. Actually, let me screen share it again. I'm going to go to the answer choice. All right, you're going to see all this other stuff.
Okay.
Okay, so it says the man, in fact, had not sold the auto. Wait, the man called the purchaser and told her that he had sold the automobile to a friend. The man, in fact, had not sold the automobile. Based off of that rule that we just saw, is this a direct revocation? Yes or no?
Yes.
You're right. I need you to take a stand.
Yes.
So you're going with yes. So you're going with the fact that the lie is inconsequential.
It doesn't, it's irrelevant. Yeah.
It's irrelevant. Okay, now let's continue. So this is what I need you to do, right? Is not kind of go all over the place as we did for a second. Go to the writing, go to the answer choices, like stick with rules, right? Stick with issue spotting. So we have an option contract that wasn't proper, so it was revocable. Then you're going into on March 12th that you're saying that he did revoke. We're not 100% sure, but that's what we're going to choose. On March 14th, the purchaser learned that the man still owned the automobile, and on that date called the man and said, I'm coming over to your place with $3,000. Before we even go further, what can we summarize that as an attempt to do right there?
An attempt to execute the offer, an attempt to close the deal.
Okay, so technically, right, we want to say accept. That was an attempt to accept, acceptance. Well, we know about acceptances. You can no longer accept after the offer has been terminated. The offer, if per your analysis a second ago, revoked.
I got you.
This acceptance.
So that was an offer.
So no, this is not an offer. This is just now an untimely acceptance.
Okay.
All right. And by the way, I want you to know, right? And hopefully you can see it building. There's a lot of takeaways. Like you would be spending maybe a good 20 minutes on this question afterwards to figure out all the things and be confident with all of those steps, right? And this goes for everybody. We all get to that question that's just like throwing us off. And it's just like, all right, I'm not walking away from this until I get, because this is like 3 to 5 rules layered in one question, which is why it's so different. All right. So this was an attempted acceptance. Then it says the man replied, don't bother. I won't deliver the automobile to you under any circumstances. All right. So at that point, there was an attempted acceptance. He said, hey, I'm not accepting your acceptance. Right. The purchaser protested, but made no further attempt to pay or take delivery of the automobile. So he protested. And now it's basically saying who's going to win. Well, who's going to win comes down to whether or not there was a contract. So I'm going to ask Anita, I want you to give me a short and sweet answer. I want you to summarize everything that we've done. Is there a contract form in favor, which would be then in favor of?
I'm in favor of there was no contract, sir.
Okay, you're going with no contract. All right, Michael, what are you going with?
I'm going with that there wasn't a contract.
And actually, one more time, back to Anita. Anita, you're going with no contract for what reason specifically?
I'm going with no contract because there was no writing.
Okay, no contract because there was no writing. Michael, you're going with no contract because?
Well, not necessarily because there was no writing, but because he wasn't compelled to keep the offer open. Like he wasn't forced to keep the offer open. So
So you're going with no contract because there was no option contract.
Right.
Okay. Sarah, what are you going with?
The same thing, I think, no contract because there was no option contract.
Okay. And then last one, let's do one more. Let's do Erica. Erica, what are you going with?
I'm going with the same, that there was no contract because there was no option contract.
Okay. All right. We got like the last three were all the same. Does anybody have one more that they want to add in? Okay. So unfortunately, we're all wrong. JR rose her hand at the last minute. JR, what you got?
Oh, I was gonna say no. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry, my Wi-Fi is so bad tonight. I was gonna say no contract because he revoked the offer before she accepted it.
That is it, JR. Okay, so let's take in all the answers, right? And why the other ones weren't it. So first off, Anita, you were caught up in statute of frauds from the very beginning and you sunk your teeth into that and you just kind of like, I'm going with that all the way.
Okay.
Now, statute of frauds is triggered when there's a contract for the sale of goods over 500, which we do have here. However, what is statute of frauds?
It's a defense.
It's a defense to what?
Formation.
Formation. So you have a defense to formation. And then also on our plate, we have a formation issue. If the contract was never formed, do we need a defense?
No.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Although statute of fraud seemingly has something here, right? The better answer is going to be a contract wasn't formed to begin with. Therefore, we don't need a defense to formation. Do we get that?
You talking to me?
Yes.
Yes. 100%. Mm-hmm.
Perfect. And then last thing I want to also say, Anita, is that, and it's tricky, right? Because sometimes it is that like one sentence, one word that gets you. But one thing that I know a lot of us don't allow for ourselves to do is to be guided by the fact pattern. Where is the fact pattern taking me? What are they focusing on? What are they trying to make clear? And I want you to notice all of these facts that go to the formation issue. This whole back and forth of like offer, maybe option contract, but actually not. Then revocation, and intentionally they're making it tricky on whether it was in fact a revocation, right? Then they're going into an acceptance and untimely, like literally so much is going towards that seemingly just from the like allocation of facts seems to be the focus. But the number one reason why is because the better answer would be that there's no contract as opposed to a defense, because we don't even need to get to defense. All right. So let me go back now to the other answer. Michael, can you tell me why your answer would not be the type of answer we would look for? This is how you get to two answer choices and we end up choosing the wrong one. So why is it wrong to say that I'm going with no contract because there was an invalid option contract?
Well, because there was no contract that was formed to begin with. So for him to revoke the offer before the other person had accepted, the contract just became inadequate. So for them to say that there was no option contract, then it's just irrelevant.
Okay, I got just a tad bit lost in some of that, but at the end, yes, I wouldn't say it's irrelevant, but here would be my question to make it clear for everybody. Does a failed option contract render a contract as a whole invalid?
No.
A failed option contract simply means what?
A failed option contract simply means that the option's just not there to accept anymore.
The option, well, not that the option's not there to accept, that means that the offer is revocable. If the option, so this is again back to where I know a lot of us are going to be doing Legally Fit, and this is where that understanding of the law is going to like go to the next level to allow this to flow. So what is the purpose, the function of an option contract? It simply keeps the offer open and prevent it from being revoked, but it still has to be revoked in order to actually destroy the contract. So the whole point is that an option contract is not a reason why It could be a portion of the reason, but it can't be the ultimate reason why there's no contract. Here, there's no contract because the offer was terminated by revocation before it was accepted. So that would be the better answer. Okay, so before we leave this question, right? That was a lot. It was a build up to that, trying to get to that. Hopefully, we already got a few takeaways. But as I did with Sarah before, right? I'm just gonna give it to us this time, right? Because I know I'm like working you guys pretty heavy without being used to this material. So I want to give it to, I'll give this next slide to you without working through it. Look at how I'm breaking down the question so I can learn from this the next time. So first off, I'm like assessing for myself. Oops. Okay. I'm assessing for myself what was the pattern. So the pattern here was we had an offer, we had an unsuccessful attempt to create an option contract, we had a direct revocation by the offer, we had the offeree attempts to accept, but it was untimely, and ultimately we had no contract. That was the example, right, of what we just did a second ago of taking out all the fluff, taking out everything, how everything was done, and just like this was the order of operation. What was the law tested here? This tested creation of an option contract, the threshold for properly revoking, and the timeliness requirement of accepting before revocation. Skills tested. It tested your ability to ignore the red herring facts. These should all be takeaways that you acknowledge right before you move on. Don't bother. I won't deliver the automobile under any circumstances. Didn't do anything. The purchaser protesting, but made no further attempt to pay or take delivery. Didn't do anything. All right. What's something else that didn't do anything that was throwing us off for a second there, Anita? You remember something else that we were like, ooh, I don't know what to do with that.
That phone call?
And what specifically about it?
The statute of frauds.
No. Oh,
wait a minute. So, I mean, that's what threw me off. In a telephone call, you know, I thought because it was a phone call that, and it was over 500, that, I mean, when I read further, it was more about the option, but I thought the option part was the red herring, was the throw off. And I thought, yeah.
So I'm talking about specifically this part right here. Remember, we were in that fork in the road on, was this a revocation? Because it said that the man, in fact, see, and that's what I'm saying. Like, there's so many takeaways.
Got it.
Start to forget what some of the takeaways are. So, what are we telling ourselves about somebody lying during a revocation?
It doesn't matter. They revoked it. They don't have to tell you why.
I would go into my outline and I would put, now I've learned it. Like, if somebody is lying during their revocation, it doesn't matter.
Amen.
There we go. And we just accept it. We don't be like, why? I don't get it. It's like, it's nothing to get. This is telling you, right? This is the threshold. Lying doesn't matter. I accept it. Move on. And yeah, look how that one works, Anita. Like, we're so caught up on the telephone call still, which is that was a big one for you, but we got to soak up all the issues and all the lessons, and that's a big one. So that way, when we see the next fact pattern and it has somebody who's trying to revoke and lies, that's no longer going to be a fork in the road. It's not going to slow you down. You're gonna be like, nope, I know exactly what to do here. Cool.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. All right, we got one last question. These are some tough questions, by the way. Especially this one, this formation type of question. But yeah, hopefully we're learning about this system of patterns and taking away. Any questions on this question before we move on?
Are we going to see the choices, or you don't? Do you have
so for this one, I don't even have the choices, and because there's going to be an answer choice that is no contract because the offer was revoked. Like, let's go ahead and say like that is the answer choice. And there's like a bunch of other stuff. Oh, no, there's not a contract because the statute of frauds is violated. Yes, there is a contract because the offer was irrevocable to play to the option. There's going to be all those ones. And the answer is going to be no contract because this, no formation because this was properly revoked. All right. So we're going to do one more question and then kind of do again a recap and a debrief. So let me stop sharing. All right. I need a volunteer for my last question, please. As I prepare this question. All right. I saw Erica's hand. I'll let Erica do this one, Michael. Isn't that a question yet? Appreciate you participating, though. All right. All right, Erica. It's the last question of the night. You know we got to finish strong. Okay.
I hope so.
No, I don't want that hope so.
Just
We will. All right, here we go. All right, I have to stretch this out pretty big. Is that can you read that okay on your side?
Yeah. Do you want me to read it out loud?
I want you to read it out loud. Go for it.
Okay. So first, what is the best advice the attorney can provide, which is a call of the question. And then I would go to a buyer sent a signed letter to a seller that stated ship 100 boxes of nails at $3 per box, the price quoted in your circular. The seller mailed the buyer a signed form acknowledgement that agreed to the buyer's terms and stated on the reverse side, disputes regarding quality shall be arbitrated. The buyer did not reply to the seller's acknowledgement and the seller shipped the nails. When the buyer received the nails, it found their quality to be unsatisfactory and sued the seller for breach of warranty. The seller has asked an attorney whether the party's contract requires arbitration of the buyer's claim. And then what is the best advice the attorney can provide? So obviously the main dispute is the arbitration agreement that was on the reverse side. Disputes regarding quality shall be arbitrated. The buyer did not reply to the seller's acknowledgement. The seller shipped the nails.
And I want everybody in the chat, as we're doing this question too, I want everybody to have an opinion on this ultimately. And so I want you to answer yes or no to that, where it says the seller has asked the attorney whether the party's contract requires arbitration. So I'll tell you when, but I want you to start thinking about it. And I want you to either say yes, the party's contract does require arbitration, or no, it does not require arbitration. Like that's the question I have for you. So that's our new call of the question. Does this contract require arbitration? Yes or no, it does not require. So everybody's going to put either yes or no in the chat here in a second. But yeah, continue to work through it.
So looking at thinking about goods, from what I remember from rules, is that the acceptance when accepting goods, if they don't meet the criteria that you requested, that you're allowed to deny acceptance, right? Like not accept them, and then give the seller enough time to fix the issue, is what I remember.
So then we probably don't remember all of those rules, but like, where are you leaning right now into yes or no then of this arbitration clause being put in there?
I think that I don't think it requires an arbitration clause. That's just my opinion.
Okay, so we're going with no. All right, I want everybody to put in the chat whether you think yes, it will require arbitration, or no, it will not. And then let me pull up my chat and see what starts rolling in here. So we got yes, yes, we got no, we got yes, we got yes. Okay. No, yes, yes. So we're going on both sides of this. We're going no. All right. Theo's going no arbitration because can allow to cure defect. All right. All right. Do you like magic shows, Erica?
Yeah.
This is my magic show effect where it's just like the mind is blown at the end. Okay. I've literally given you pretty much the exact same fact pattern as question 2 that we did tonight. Do you see that or no?
Wait, which one was question 2? Was it the one we just did?
Wait, what was question 2? Question 2 with the nails, right? The one that I put into the chat. So,
Oh, was it the widgets one?
exactly. So look, I'm gonna read this question, and
Okay.
look. So where you went wrong here, and the very first thing is you did not spot the area of law that was triggered. I saw some people in the chat did material alteration, blah blah blah, 2207, battle of the forms. Some people did spot it, but Erica, this was battle of the forms 2207, the problem we just did like 20 minutes ago, and you're not alone. Look at how many people also did different things, different answers. Somebody also talked about cure. But this is why it's hard for us to improve on the multiple choice, everybody, if we can't do just that, right? So look, a buyer sent a signed letter to a seller that stated, ship 100 boxes of nails at $3 per box, the price quoted in your circular. All right. So a buyer sent a signed letter, an offer. The seller mailed the buyer a signed form acknowledgement, right? So an acknowledgement form. So there's the letter, and then there was the form. Okay, that still doesn't mean it's battle of the forms yet. It says it agreed to the buyer's terms and stated on the reverse side, disputes regarding quality shall be arbitrated. So how do we summarize that, Erica? There was an offer, then there was an acceptance, and that acceptance accepted, but it also included another term. And that triggers 2207. So I mentioned that takeaway, but for some reason, right, it's still not registering because that takeaway did not trigger for you when you saw it in a new scenario.
Right.
So then it goes, the buyer did not reply to the seller's acknowledgement, and the seller shipped the nails. When the buyer received the nails, it found their quality to be unsatisfactory and sued the breach for warranty. All that stuff is really just kind of like fluff at this point. Right now, we're just like, this is 2207, and we have to see whether or not this term is going to be added. So we have to go through our 2207 analysis. Do you remember that 2207 analysis, or should we bring up the chart?
Can you bring up the chart? I remember a little bit of
Yeah.
it, but
I would be surprised if you remembered all of that. I want us to always feel comfortable going to our rule, right? So yes, that's a big chart. You would have a crazy photographic memory if you had that down. So we're gonna bring up our chart. And I'm going to switch share screen to that here. I'm going to put this question in the chat as well, so you guys can pull the question up itself. All right, and then I'm going to share screen on this. All right, Erica, when you're ready, start walking me through.
okay. So we would go through step 1, which is, does the UCC apply? So we know that they're talking about goods because they're nails. So that would be a yes. So we go down the yes route. Acceptance is definite, seasonable, and has new terms. So acceptance, so far we know that the acceptance was definite. Because they said a signed form acknowledgement that agreed to the buyer's terms. Obviously it's seasonable. There's no issues in timing, but it does have new terms because it says that on the reverse side they added disputes regarding quality shall be arbitrated.
Good.
So then we go down to, was the expression of acceptance made expressly conditional on inclusion of the new terms. I would say no, because it says that they did not reply to the seller's acknowledgement.
Ooh, that's not why.
No.
Because it says yeah, you're looking at the wrong. Okay, so this is good. So you're looking at the wrong thing. Can somebody remind me of the takeaway that we took away from question 2 tonight? The first one that was on 2207. What was our takeaway? Regarding that question of whether or not it was expressly conditional.
Was it that it was we are pleased to accept your offer, or no? It was the quote that there was a direct.
Yeah. So what was our takeaway from that, Sarah? Like we said that whenever
we see like a direct, oh, I don't know. I'm sorry.
you're right there. Whenever we see, Sarah, it just basically saying I accept, and then it includes the new term. We said that was not enough to be expressly conditional.
Right.
So here, Erica, is that what we have? Do we have a simple acceptance and then an inclusion of a new term?
Yes.
Yeah, it says they agreed to the buyer's terms, and then it said disputes regarding quality shall be arbitrated. It's a simple acceptance and the new terms. There's nothing additional to make this expressly conditional. So again, right, we're not remembering our takeaways. Even when I'm directly giving it to you all, we're not remembering them. Okay, so that's our takeaway. So the answer here should be quickly no, that this is not expressly conditional. Okay, so then we go into whether the new term is additional or different. Is this additional or different, Erica?
It's an additional term.
And if it's additional, you have to look for express assent. It said that's where you go into the buyer did not reply to the acknowledgement form. There's no assent. So you're looking at the wrong fact there. You look at the acceptance form for that other question for no. So here there was no express assent because it says the buyer never replied to that acknowledgement form. So you have to rely on the fact that both parties are merchants. Does it appear as though both parties are merchants here?
It appears so in the sense that it says that the price quoted in your circular.
Good. That's very good. I love that, right? That's a good analysis. Like, yeah, so at least the seller appears to be a merchant. With the buyer, we don't have much information on it, but like it's kind of taking me there. So I'm going to go ahead and say, yeah, but I want us to know here, that is something we would like more facts on whether the buyer, who the buyer is and what do they do? We don't know, but we don't know enough to go either way. But let's go ahead and say, all right, maybe both parties are merchants. Do any of the exceptions apply?
The new term materially alters the contract.
So do you think an arbitration clause materially alters the contract?
I think so, just because I feel like in the other question, the issue was on the liability.
Good, good. I love how okay, there we go, Eric. We're using what we learned.
Yeah, so that's something that really stuck with me when Sarah did it, was that it wasn't the focus on the $100, but the issue of liability and how liable they are. And I feel like with the arbitration, it deals with the liability as well.
Okay, I like, look, that is logic. I haven't seen this before. Let me apply some logic, Sarah. So when you see a question, excuse me, Erica, when you see a question on the bar and it's like it tests something else you've never seen before, you have to do literally just that. You have to go based off of what you do know and what you have seen and make sense of it. So that was stellar. Good job. So you're going with this does materially alters the contract. So it doesn't matter whether the buyer is a merchant because ultimately the exception applies. So then you're going with, what's your final conclusion? If you're saying that the exception applies, what's the conclusion on your new conclusion on whether this contract requires arbitration?
No.
No, the term is not going to be added. Is there a contract?
There is, I believe. Just
don't hesitate. Because we've already done this question before, and we said before.
I know.
said before that, yes, there is a contract, right? Because look, in your chart, when you go down 22072, there's a contract immediately because it's deemed to be an acceptance. So yes, there is a contract, but no, the additional term is not added. All right.
Okay.
For this one, to give you guys just the satisfaction, I'll bring up the actual full question. You can see the answer choices. Give me a second. And you could see how you're just simply going to play the matching game. The answer choice is C. A contract was formed when the seller mailed its acknowledgement, and the court must decide whether the arbitration term should be excluded as a material alteration of the contract. Look how perfect that answer is based off of that analysis we just went through. It doesn't get any better. So you can even look at the other ones. They might be appealing, but they're not as good. We just did the analysis. We see what this is hinging on, and that reflects that. It says a contract was formed when the seller mailed its acknowledgement form and the arbitration term became part of the contract. Well, that would be then assuming that an arbitration clause does not materially alter. And what I can tell you based off of doing a bunch of questions is that arbitration clauses typically, or like the rule is that does materially alter the contract. So that would be incorrect to say that. A contract was formed pursuant to conduct when the buyer received the nails, and a court would exclude the arbitration provision from the contract. No contract exists because the arbitration term and the seller's acknowledgement form create a counter offer, right? So all those would be wrong. So the answer choice is C here. Erica, talk to me. What would be your takeaway from this?
Well, number one is learn the patterns and try to remember the patterns of things. I think also just remembering that for me, it was like anytime that there was a new term added, automatically my brain would go to counteroffer. And so I think that's where I was making mistakes when it comes to contracts. And so now it's good to know that even if there's additional terms added with the battle of the forms, there could still be a valid contract.
Exactly.
And then deciding that.
If it's battle of the forms, good.
Right.
Now, here's my question to you. And I want to better understand you. And you is like the mini, which is tell me why when we read this question that it did not pop out as the same as question number 2. Can you give me any insight? And then after her, if anybody else has anything to add, I want to try to understand, how did you why didn't this ring a bell from question 2?
I think for me, it was because I think at least for me, what really threw me off was the arbitration. And because of like background knowledge of like other ways arbitrations can affect contracts, that really was like, oh, arbitration. Like my focus just went to that term. And so I started thinking about like 1,000 other things that did not have to do with the actual focus of the question. So that was for me where I got confused.
That's great. I'm happy you said that. So like, it's kind of the same thing that happened with Anita earlier in a similar way, right? You kind of saw something and then you just hooked on it. And then it just like crowded your brain. And then you're just kind of like lost in the sauce. And then you just like, all right, this is talking about UCC acceptance, of goods and stuff like that. You just kind of went somewhere. So we don't want to do that, right? So we want to practice clearing our brain. And that's a skill to do, of just like not getting caught up with some of those things. And also, Erica, like, hopefully you can see what my brain is doing is like, I'm analyzing and summarizing I hope I got it. All right. So I can't believe I missed it. Jesus. What I'm doing is summarizing these facts, Erica, as I go through, right? So I'm like, look, a buyer sent a signed letter to a seller. Okay, he stated, okay, so this is a UCC, sent an offer. And then the seller mailed the buyer a signed acknowledgement form. I'm already like, uh-oh, spidey senses are tingling because I have an acceptance, or excuse me, I have an offer, and then he's accepting by sending his own form. The last thing I'm looking for is for that person to add in a new term, and da 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 da. He added in a new term. I'm for sure in 2207 now. But so all that was occurring, and I want that to be registering even before you get to that arbitration clause that threw you off. Was the mere fact that, like, honestly, in a contract scenario, whenever you see acknowledgement form, you should think battle of the form. Like, that should be a soft buzzword for that. Doesn't mean it always will be the focus, but that should be a soft buzzword. So yeah, so keep that in mind, Eric, as you go through. It's like, see how I'm generalizing questions. I know you're part of the program. We're going to be doing this often in our MBE workshop so we can reinforce this skill, but this is also what you're going to have to do question after question, right? On those 2,200 to 3,000 questions that we should all be doing. This is how you learn from them. This question, guys, we should have been able to answer this question in 10 seconds, right? Because I've given you both of them in the choices. After we get off, look at them and compare them again and see how they are the exact same thing. It just changed. Before, it was anti-coil widgets, and this time it was a box of nails. Last time it was maximum liability. This time it was an arbitration clause, but the pattern was exactly the same. Jose, you wanted to add something?
So what threw me off like was the first sentence. When I read the first sentence, I really thought that it was actually a firm offer because of the circular. But then I kept reading. I was like, oh my goodness, this is almost like a replica of the first question.
Yeah.
So that was the first sentence was like, all right, I'm thinking firm offer. But then I continued to read, and then I was like, oh no, this is the same additional terms.
Good. So your brain caught it. There we go. Awesome to hear. And for the record, I'm confused as to why circular automatically triggers firm offer for you, because I don't see that connection of a circular and a firm offer.
Well, a circular would be like a flyer, right?
I know what a circular is, but I'm just like,
Okay.
oh yeah, why are you connecting a flyer or a circular to a firm offer?
Oh, because the first sentence said a buyer sent a signed letter to a seller that stated ship 100 boxes of nails at $3 per box. So I felt that if they don't actually meet that exact
Price.
exact price or exact quantity, there's no offer. They can go ahead and just reject it, right?
So that likely wouldn't be a firm offer issue, though, Jose.
yeah.
That would end up being like, is that flyer an offer? That's what that would be. A firm offer has to have assurance to hold the offer open. It's like option contract. A firm offer has to say, I am holding the offer open for some period of time, or if not, a reasonable time will be used. So yeah, so like, I want to just go ahead and give you that like little sub note, even though that wasn't end up being what it is. I don't want you to think either to that a circular alone would trigger firm offer. That is triggering an ad. And then if that ended up being the fact pattern, Jose, where now they're fighting over the price, this new price versus the circular, you would say that whether this ad or the circular would constitute an offer, that would be the analysis.
Yeah, I think I got those two mixed up. Thanks for clarifying.
Yeah, no problem, man. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and debrief and start to wind down from this session. So let's start off with JR. JR, what's your takeaway from this session after doing these multiple choice together about, mainly, how you were doing them, what you really need to focus on moving forward, etc.
Yeah, I think my takeaway is going to be implementing some of the things that like already are there, like reading the call to question, but then also understanding what that rule is and knowing what those parts to the rule is. I'll honestly, like, I wasn't someone who ever had my outline out when I was doing these questions. So that is like news to me that I'm going to be taking into this round of studying, to have that there, because I think it's just a better mental reinforcement. And then also with the way you were saying, like for some of them, like, yeah, you may need to rewrite it out, but for some of it, it's just taking the time to sit with it, go through it after you've already gone, like, even if you went through it and, it was like here where we had question 2 and 4 where they were similar, don't just be like, oh yeah, I did this one already, I know what it is, move on. Like, go back, like, okay, what was that asking? Okay, it's a UCC, it's about all the forms. Okay, we know that the like contract is going to be good. Okay, what do we know next? Okay, the term is not going to be valid. Just like all those little steps to work through to make sure that you're not just being like one and done. Okay, that was fine, but actually making sure you know it and have it there.
Yeah, it's such a dissection, right? And I think sometimes because of the mere fact that you have 3,000 to do, you're just like, all right, let me run through these. You cannot. You have to really slow down and soak this stuff up. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's honestly like I think one of the misconceptions that they're like, oh yeah, if you do like 2,000 questions or 2,200 questions, like whatever your bar program tells you, they're like, you'll be fine. Like that's the X amount that you need to hit, or this is the X amount of hours. So you think, okay, great. Like I checked off another box, when in reality, it's these extra steps that you're helping us walk through, D, where it's like making sure, you're really understanding what rules being called upon here. Don't let any of the red herrings get you. Like keep that tunnel vision on what the actual problem is. And then also, hey, guess what? Now that we've done that, let's go through that all again, because that's what's going to make it stick. So come exam time, you're not in the trenches like freaking out. You're like, I've been here, I know this, I can recall, and let's go.
Exactly. I love it. Thank you for that takeaway. And to that point of quality over quantity, for most of us that didn't catch it, it was as if we did not do question number 2. So if you said today, right, like if I stopped at question 3 and we said, how many questions did you do today? I'm going to say you only did 2, because when we did question 4 and we didn't remember question 2, that was the same thing as not doing question 2. Do we see what I'm saying there? Like you only did a question if you actually took something from it and learned in a way that's going to improve you for the next time. So think about that when you're doing practice questions. Like simply going through the question and getting it right is not what practice multiple choice should be about in your head. It's like, how many did I do and learn from? And you should be learning from every single question, even the ones you get right. And what you'll notice is as you increase your speed with this process, you'll be able to go through these a lot faster and get through a lot more in a certain sitting or a certain day, et cetera. But yeah, guys, these are how you do questions. Here's my next question. Let me go to Michael on this one. Michael, I have something in my head. What would you say was the number one reason, right? Like we were getting some of these questions wrong. And notice how on all of these questions, for most of them, except for the first one, I didn't even give you guys the answer choices, right? So like, I think that should be interesting for us all to see that like, the answer choices weren't even there. We were just kind of like walking through the law, but like, what was the number one reason why we weren't getting these right today?
Just some misunderstanding of the law, not knowing the law really well yet. For me, for instance, I haven't looked at the material since July when I last took the exam. So I'm sure once I start relearning the law, I'll be able to remember key facts or trigger words so that when I do multiple questions, I'll be able to spot, okay, this is what the issue is testing. This is what the facts I have to look for and go from there.
So yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and summarize that too in my words of like the issue spotting. The first thing that we want to do is like, what specific rule is this testing and being accurate about that, and then doing the full thorough analysis. And so I want everybody to recall that, right? And remember that of when you're doing multiple choice, you should know why every question, right? Why that question came down to that rule, why that rule was triggered. And if you didn't catch that immediately, you got to pause and you got to figure it out. And you got to see like, what are the generic facts here? The specific facts first, and then how can I generalize it to see it again in the future in a different way, right? What are those facts that triggered this issue? All right. So yeah, ton of lessons here. Yeah, once we start Legally Fit Bar Prep, I have even more resources for you guys for multiple choice. Under the time circumstances, we didn't get to go through the tips and strategies that I have of the different things that you want to consider and how to balance that, right? So like, for example, one of them is second guessing, like what our technique and strategy is to battle second guessing, not getting lost in the sauce. The question on the red background, the contracts question that had all that stuff, that was an example of getting lost in the sauce. Where there's like 4 different things. There's a system for not getting lost in the sauce, right? So all these kind of things, these smaller issues that attribute to getting questions wrong, we have them outlined, and then we have solutions for you to practice as you go on. So super excited to share that all with you all. I saw a question in the chat. Lucine, you put, I'm not in DeAndre's class yet. Does anyone know if he recommends this to learn by doing mixed MBEs or one subject at a time? Oh, and then Legally Fit answered, we focus on one subject at a time in the learn phase, and we have days where you do mixed. So in the Legally Fit program, and if you happen to be self-studying or you're going to betray us and go somewhere else and study, it's fine. We still love you. I recommend that majority of your practice is doing the same subject. Can anybody, using the logic of what we just learned today, can tell me why I want you doing the same subject, right, when you're doing multiple choice questions?
You get to see the patterns.
There we go. If you do contracts and then torts and then evidence and then property and then back to a random, right, you're never going to be able to see those patterns back to back. Right? So yes, stick with one subject and dive into it and get personal with it and break it down, right? You want to really dive in, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, I see what we're doing here. By the third, look, Erica, by the third time we see that 2207, I know I'm not going to miss it again. But if you spread those out over 2 weeks, of course you're going to miss it because it's been too much to fall in between. So our schedule is built for it, but I'm a big proponent of you should study in a way where you're not juggling multiple classes, right? Because it's hard to do exactly what I'm telling you, which is to like dive in and understand it deeply. So with the Legally Fit schedule, right, the way that we do it, we average about 3 days per subject. Day 1, you're going to learn the subject, which means you're going to go through our lecture videos. And then also you have Legally Fit hypos, most of which you do in the videos. And then there'll be a few that you do, afterwards. And those Legally Fit hypos, and the best way that I could imitate going through questions with you live, right? That's what the Legally Fit hypos are in a written form. Like I'm literally talking you through. My explanations are not just like, oh, here's the right answer. The explanations are really like spelled out. Like this is what's being triggered. This is how, the format of the analysis, and it's really taking a deep dive into it. After your learn day, so let's say it's contracts. After you learn contracts, then the next day is an essay day. And guess what? All you're doing is essays all day for that subject. You're looking at anywhere from 6 to 8 hypos in that day, and you're catching the patterns. You're seeing multiple rules triggered, right? You're getting practice with that, and you're understanding the essay for that topic. And then the next day, you're doing all multiple choice for that topic. So again, I think it really is the practical way to study because you see, as Anita said, the patterns. All right, so that's it for today. I'll stick around if anybody, I know a lot of people here have already signed up for Legally Fit, or they're basically just pending, they're waiting to make their final payment. I'll stick around if anybody has any questions around the program or anything else. So yeah, do you have anything regarding the session or questions about the program? You're welcome, Michael. See you, Erica. See you in class soon. Hey, Sarah.
Hi.
I was gonna
So
call you.
I know I should have bowed out of Themis when they wouldn't give me my refund.
We were so bad you didn't come with us too in the
I
beginning.
know, and I was so stressed about just like making the right decision and doing what everyone else is doing. It's dumb, but don't do that for anyone listening. My question is, what do you suggest for somebody? I guess it's kind of personal to me, so I'm sorry if somebody's like waiting, but for somebody who failed by 10 points, like I don't feel there are topics that I do know that I need better understanding on. Obviously, it was I definitely bombed MBE. But I don't know if I need to do like a full rundown of like the whole program. And I also don't think there's many personal reasons of why I don't have the capacity to do like 10-hour days that we can talk about some other time. But
You said there are no reasons why you can't do that, or
no, there are personal reasons of why I cannot do like the 10-hour days again. So I'm trying to figure out what to do. I feel like I just mostly need like a tutor. And I definitely don't feel like watching Barbary videos or Themis videos are what I need right now.
Yes.
So
it sounds like, if you're interested, it sounds like, yeah, like this would be one of the assessment and consultation calls that we're doing. I can give like a quick answer, but we can really kind of like sit down and dive in. That's what a lot of students are doing. So it's basically, it's $99 and it's an hour. And I sit down with the scorecard. You tell me the personal reasons. We kind of really get into it and really break it down. So
okay, cool.
do you want to do one of those, or do you want me to just give you like a quick, short and sweet?
You can give me a quick, short and sweet, and then we can dive in. I probably will do it, but I'm
Okay, cool.
I'm open to hearing a little something, what you have to say with the 10 point, knowing that I just missed by 10 points.
Yeah. So knowing that my general message to anybody, right, no matter how many points they passed, is that you always want to work backwards from a full-time study. Okay. And then from there, it's like whatever has to be, as you said, those personal commitments, like, right, like find the mark of where that has to stop and get as close as that. So like maybe you can't do the 10-hour days. Can you do 7-hour days? Can you do 6-hour days? Like you wanted that to just be as high as you can, number one. And the reason why, Sarah, is that like this exam is just nothing to play with, right? And like I want you to be in the position that you don't try to like, all right, let me just give it what I need to just get over that small hump. I want you to be in the position of, I am making sure that there's no way that I'm taking this test for a third time. And I have seen personally students who were a few points behind, 4 points behind, go on to take the test multiple times. I know somebody who was Shelby came in and talked didn't pass now what? On the first attempt, she didn't pass by 4 points, and then she went on to take the test 3 more times. She passed on her 4th attempt. So all that to say, it's like there's so many factors that go into the variables of how this thing is tested, all that stuff. Like, so that would be my quick answer, is that like you want to build a schedule that still allows you to study as much as you can, for the mere fact that you want to leave as little to chance as possible.
Yeah, because we can't really get caught up in the 10 points because we have no idea what we're going to be tested on. So thinking that just because I missed by 10 points that I just need a little bit, which I don't think I need a little bit, but you know what I mean? Like there's still a ton of work to be done. Okay.
And with that too, because like, and also Sarah, like the essays, right? Like, have you kind of like talked to other people, seen other score? Like, oh, you're in the reread territory, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So did you see differences in your essay grading?
Yeah, the first grader like bombed me and the second grader gave me really, I mean, you'll see when I show it to you,
Yeah.
but I felt like the second grader was nicer.
Oh, that's very rare too. Usually the second one is the harder one. But so all that to say too is like, it's just for that reason, right? The next time, just based off of the grader you get the same exact work product, it may or may not only be 10 points off. So yeah, it's just so
Right.
many. So let me
Totally.
give you the link right here, just so before you leave, you can copy and paste it for your convenience.
It was put in the chat already.
Oh,
Thank
perfect.
you.
All right, so I'll
Appreciate
talk to you soon. All right, Jose, JR, you guys got any questions, or just hanging out? Lucine, Mantilla, Lucine?
Yeah, hello.
Hello.
First of all, thank you for doing this session, especially for those who aren't in your class. I wanted to know, do you recommend us for, I'm really bad at essays. I really did poorly. I wanted to know, for practice, do you recommend we write it out? Or because most courses that I've, jumped onto, they recommend just issue spotting, reading the model answer or the sample answer.
Yes. So in our program, we want students to touch 100 essays. About half of those you should be writing out. So anywhere from 40 to 50 would be a good number to write out. And the other 50, you can either read an issue spot, or you can do a hybrid of writing out portions of it, but not the entire thing.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I was just hanging out, but I do want to say again, thank you. I really appreciate it. And then I have my one-on-one, so I'll see you tomorrow, D. Thank you.
You're welcome, JR. I'll see you tomorrow. All right. Yeah, good session, guys. Good session. All right. I think that's all for today. I will see you guys later. Have a good night.
Hello.
Recording ends.